What is the feature-length podcast? Anyone?
The feature-length podcast is a show where three idiots talk about film and entertainment.
Good answer!
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to us?
Yeah! I'm talking to the voices in my head.
Like, I truly don't know. It felt like a fever dream. I swear to God, I could not
It sounds so stupid hearing that.
If you're listening to this is a podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies and TV for a feature length of time.
Hello everyone, and happy 5th of November. I'm Daniel, and with me are Carol.
Hello.
And Marco.
Hey.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, where today we're trying something different than our usual protocol. We'll be recording this episode and then posting it completely unedited on the same day. This idea may seem a bit radical, but in that case, it's completely in line with the movie we're talking about today. We're looking back on the very underrated noir/action movie/political thriller, V for Vendetta, released in 2005 and based on the graphic novel of the same name. For anyone not familiar with the film, it plunges us headfirst into a dystopian future in London, England. Modern society as we know it has completely collapsed, and world governments are in shambles. The United States, or as it is now known, the former United States, is the most recent government to succumb to revolution. And as this film depicts, Britain is surely next. The British government is now being run by a dictatorship with strict and brutal control over its population, using its monopoly on everything from law enforcement to food rationing to media influence. The autocracy has taken over, ever since the so-called reclamation after the party was elected out of hope and desperation. We are introduced to Evie, a citizen living in this bleak shell of London's former state. Her parents were part of an early generation of revolutionaries and were abducted when Evie was a child years ago. One night, after being caught on the streets after curfew and attacked by a group of officers, she is rescued by a mysterious masked vigilante who introduces himself only as V. V wears a mask meant to resemble the historical figure Guy Fawkes, who roughly 400 years prior made an attempt to fight against his suppressive government by blowing up the Parliament building in 1600s London before ultimately being caught and hanged. V explains that he intends to follow up on that attempt to end the current reign of tyranny and facilitate Britain's rebirth. From here, V and Evie both slowly gravitate towards the other's ideology, meeting in the middle, with Evie taking up her long-suppressed responsibility in the fight, and V finding his long-lost humanity in Evie. Together, the two of them strive to usher in a new era of freedom for the people. Yeah. So here we are. We're live, kind of. The revolution will be live.
Yeah.
Oh boy, boy.
Where do we begin?
Where do we want to start? Do we want to go around and do impressions?
Round
robin
Yeah,
with
so.
our watch history?
Sure.
All right. Carol, as per
Yeah.
usual, we have forced you to watch something you've never seen before, so please take it away.
Yeah, I'm happy that you forced me to watch this one, though, as is not always the case. Yeah, I somehow knew nothing about this other than Natalie Portman was in it and had a shaved head. And that's it. I didn't know that Guy Fawkes was involved. I didn't know who Guy Fawkes was. I didn't know that's what that mask was called, because obviously I've seen that, because I don't live under a rock completely. But other than that, I knew nothing of the plot. I didn't know it was based on a graphic novel or whatever until Marco mentioned it. So everything was fresh information for me. And I just finished watching it 15 minutes before we started recording. So it's very fresh in my mind. But I was super into it, surprisingly so. I like the political parts of it, which I didn't know if I would, because sometimes that's, like, boring for me. And, like, especially these days, I was a little afraid it'd be, like, too close to home or whatever with the fake news and whatnot. But no, it was intriguing. I wanted to know what happened next at every turn. I was following the mystery. I wanted to know who V was. It was great. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and it was gorgeous. So, no complaints. 10 out of 10.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Glad
really
to hear
cool to
it.
hear.
Yeah, it was so fun.
I guess I'll go next.
Yeah.
Because Marco was the first of us to ever see this, I think. So.
The first of us
Yeah.
to take the plunge.
Yeah. So I think I first saw this movie probably I think at the beginning of university or so. It was pretty recent considering, like, I'm 25 years old and I had only seen it then. And since then, I've seen it once again with Marco. And I think Miguel might have been there too.
Yeah, because he had never seen it before, I don't think.
Yeah. And then once more for this episode. And I need to watch this movie more. I need to own it. Because it's really good, and I always kind of forget that it exists. It's kind of that's why I mentioned in the intro. It's at least I think, an underrated classic. I don't think people talk about it enough. First of all, because it only ages better with every year, it seems. Unfortunately, of course. But also, it's just a super entertaining movie, and for me, it's in the same class as The Matrix, where it's like as I just said, I need to watch it more and kind of like forget to return to it more than I should. It's like, this is probably a perfect movie. I mean, we'll get into that, but it's also I didn't realize until the end credits that the Wachowskis wrote it.
Yep.
And the whole time I was watching, I was like, this feels like, you know how after the Matrix movies, a bunch of movies came out that felt like they wanted to be the Matrix and failed. This one felt like it wanted to be the Matrix and succeeded because it was different enough, but it was very obviously influenced by the Matrix. And then I realized, then I saw the end credits and the same writers. So it's like, wow, I had no idea because I hadn't watched it in years and I completely forgot. But yeah, what a movie. This is
absolutely
Natalie Portman, Hugo Weaving, fantastic. It looks great too, especially for a 2005 movie, I think. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Pass it on to you.
Yeah, I think, I did watch this first out of anyone, although I probably have only seen it about the same number of times as you, because I think I watched it once, and then we watched it together, and now this is my third time.
Underrated classic.
Underrated classic,
awesome.
and I will completely reiterate what Dan said, that, like, I need to watch this movie more, and, like, I'm making it a national holiday in our friend group to watch this every 5th of November, because I know I had the exact same experience where I sat, and by the way, I think I am the only one here that's read the graphic novel.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I own the graphic novel. I want to talk about that a little bit too, but, like, having read the novel and then watched the movie a second time, went into it this rewatch basically remembering nothing other than, like, the opening scene and, like, the end. So then going on the whole journey again, and just as the twists and turns unfold and being like, oh, that's a cool twist. Oh, wait a minute, that's like a twist on a twist. What the hell? I was like, it just yeah, the level of, like, detail there was super exciting, and yeah, I had a fantastic time with it. It's gonna be very interesting to talk about, particularly, like, in the politics of it, like, how that's a little different from the graphic novel because of Alan Moore, who's, like, a pretty controversial figure who we can talk a little bit about too. Controversial but important. But then also, like, I personally, and I think the little tidbit I'll add here before we get too far into it is, like, I think this is, for me, with Jurassic Park, in terms of the echelon of, like, book adaptations that I think are, like, better than the source material. I think the first time having watched it, having read the graphic novel right before, I very much was like, I still respect what the graphic novel was doing, but I think being a little bit older now and watching it, I'm like, oh no, this is, like, it is the Jurassic Park perfect adaptation, where it very much is beat for beat the story, but it finds ways to change it in a way that works more cinematically, because there's just stuff that you can do in a book you can't do in a movie. And I think even, like, to a certain degree, improves on the source material, where it makes it more enjoyable, if that makes sense. Because the source material is as bleak as some of the stuff in this movie is. The source material is even more bleak, and I think that's why I've never gone back to it. Whereas this kind of uses a film structure to the best of its ability to kind of like highlight different parts of the story. Although it does lose a bit of the theming, but I'm fine with that at the end of the day because who cares? I mean, it's good. It's good enough in capturing the theming.
Cares, Marco.
I know he does, which we'll get into.
Maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah,
the way you're describing it, it sounds like the comic version is much more like Watchmen, where it's like very cynical.
It is, yeah.
I mean, this is definitely cynical too, but there are moments of levity that are needed in
definitely.
This movie.
And I do think too, what's really interesting is like, for some reason in my mind, I mean, we can get right into it. So this movie's great. We all think it's great. Everyone watch this movie. We're gonna fucking talk about this movie, okay?
Yeah, that's our recommend.
That's our recommend. I truly think anyone could watch and enjoy this movie. Like, this movie is great. Like, all around. Just, I don't know anyone that wouldn't enjoy watching this movie, honestly.
I mean, there are some violent parts for kids, but like...
Sure, yeah.
Still.
Maybe not tiny children, but they can watch it
maybe,
when
maybe.
older.
But honestly,
maybe sometimes.
it is that kind of like hyper-stylized violence, though, where...
It's fun.
It's fun. Like, it's not... You're not going to be like freaked out by it or
It's like The Matrix, like I said.
Exactly,
like, and I know a lot of people, when I was younger, before I even realized what The Matrix was, like I heard friends talking about The Matrix, and they're like, oh, The Matrix is so cool. Like, I just watched it last night.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If they can watch The Matrix, they could probably...
Yeah.
Some of them would probably want to watch this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's get right into it. Shall we talk about the Alan Moore in the room?
We should.
First.
Because I wanted to... We had talked about if I had time, I would have also read the graphic novel with you. Unfortunately, I didn't. So I'd like to hear that side of it too.
Yeah, so first of all, this is a very... Let me preface this by saying that like Alan Moore famously hates, almost, with the exception of one, every adaptation of anything. And to the point where like he doesn't want like credits on it. So like if you watch Zack Snyder's Watchmen, for example, he's not credited. It's like based on a story by Dave Gibbons, who was just the artist of Watchmen. Like Alan Moore's not credited.
He did
in
the
that
same thing
whatsoever.
for this.
Correct.
Yeah.
And with everything. So for anyone who's not aware, which potentially is probably Carol, because I don't think you probably know the deep history of Alan Moore.
No, I just know what the IMDb fun fact page
Okay,
me.
Perfect. So I'll just do a quick summary. Alan Moore is like probably the most, outside of Frank Miller, like influential person writing comics in the 80s, and really like revolutionized comics. Obviously he wrote Watchmen, which is like the gold standard of deconstruction of superheroes and comic books and all that, and it's a fantastic book. He wrote this. He wrote a bunch of stuff, like I think he wrote Swamp Thing and just a bunch of other stuff, but he also wrote The Killing Joke, which is like a very important deconstruction of Batman. Some Superman stuff, a Superman story called For the Man Who Was Everything, which is probably the best Superman story ever. So again, like he is just like at the top of his game, a very, very good writer whose work is often misinterpreted. And so like I understand him not wanting his name on the awful animated Killing Joke adaptation because that was garbage. I understand him not wanting his name on Watchmen. I mean, I think it's Zack Snyder's best movie, and I think it's pretty good. But like, it's still like it.
That's not saying much.
It misses the point. Like, I completely. Here's the thing.
We're so mean to him.
No, honestly, it is a very faithful recreation of the graphic novel. Like, without, as if the subtext went over your head though, because the whole subtext of that book is like, and we'll get into like some of his politics, but how like superheroes are like bad. Like the idea of hero worship is bad because hero worship leads to like blindly supporting things that you don't really understand. And so the superheroes in Watchmen are dumb and idiots and like ineffectual, just people in suits that are schlubby morons. But then in Zack Snyder's movie, they're all like slow-mo badass, like sick dude bros. So like,
Dude bros.
You know, it's one thing to put the image on screen, but you miss the content. So again, I understand why he doesn't want his name on that. The only thing that he likes that's an adaptation is the Justice League animated show did an adaptation of the For the Man Who Was Everything Superman story, and he was like, "No, that's pretty good. You guys got it."
Nice.
Yeah, but so like politically, why I think Alan Moore doesn't like this is to do with the fact that like, again, he is sort of the belief that the idea of hero worship, like, is a precursor to fascism. So, like, a few weeks ago, there was a pull quote from an article he had just done. It was, like, an interview he had just done. Oh, yeah, he's still alive. No, he's not, like, an old... He was just, like...
writing all of these influential works. I don't know how long he's been
in the 80s, though, yeah. I mean, he's an old man now, but he's alive.
He is an old man, yeah.
But someone did an interview, and there was a horrific, like... pull quote that went around that, of course, just for the sake of getting clicks, was basically like that people lining up to watch Batman movies is like the precursor to fascism, was like the pull quote. And then, of course, everyone was like, I'm not a fascist, I like Batman movies. And it's like, you completely missed it. Like, his whole sort of thesis is the idea that it's like the opposite of like exceptionalism and like Ayn Rand politics, like, as opposed to the idea that like you put all your hope and faith into like exceptional people, that really it's like the collective that's the betterment of everything. And so a lot of his theming in the book, and this book in particular, is very much this morally gray area of like as fascism rises and people are blindly following on that side, like having like a quote unquote like good and evil is like bad, because then you have like terrorists on the other side, and like terrorism is not inherently good, but it's like the only proportionate response to blindly following something, right? When everything is good or evil, like this is the extreme that it gets to. And so the book is way more concerned, and like Evie's relationship with V in the book, Evie's a lot younger, it's not a romantic relationship, and V is way less of like a character. V is more like a stand-in for like terrorist ideology and like a piece of shit, and the whole book is sort of about like Evie as a young person falling for that as like the only response that she can have to this extreme fascist dictatorship. And so the book is way more like, hey, this type of hero worship and good and bad only ever leads to like more of the extreme, and like the extreme on either end is not a viable option for anybody, like that's a terrible way to live. Whereas the movie, especially by the end of the movie, paints V as a bit more of like a martyr for this bigger cause, which is like by the end of the movie a good thing. Like, not that what he did was good, but that the fact that all these people are now like rallied in the cause, which is a great scene in the movie. I understand why he would be frustrated by that, because it's like he's not supposed to be a superhero. So I do get that, but I think it makes for a better movie than if they had just done the book, which is very depressing, where effectively V dies and then Evie just sort of like becomes the new V, and the idea is that like she is just like now corrupted by this like terrorist cause, and it's all that she knows in her life is to be this like extremist terrorist person. And so it's way more bleak, where it's like there's no good that can come from this. Like at the end of the day, like these equal and opposite opposing factions like are just gonna keep going back and forth until England fucking crumbles, which is really sad.
I think the movie manages to make the same it sends the same message, but it also puts a spin on it that gives us like a happier ending at the same time.
Totally.
Because I also like, especially on this rewatch, really keyed into the fact that like V is not he is not the hero of the story. Like Evie is very clearly the hero of the story. So I still got the message that I think the book was trying to send, but this seems much more enjoyable than what the book was giving us.
I agree as well, and I think the other thing was, for some reason, back in the day when I first watched it after reading the book, I felt like V was a bit too heroic of a character, but watching it now, sort of completely removed from all that context, I'm like, oh no, he is clearly still a terrorist, like what he's doing is bad, the theming of like Evie like being encompassed by this whole thing, like it the themes of it are all still there, it's present, but yeah, it's just they twist the ending in a way to make it feel a bit more uplifting as opposed to a completely dire mess, which I think is like required kind of for a traditional movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I will say, even on IMDb, it obviously highlighted a lot of the differences between the graphic novel and the film, so while I hadn't read the graphic novel, I too know a little bit of what they changed. And yeah, obviously, as you iterated, and I'm gonna reiterate it, I know English, they did change it to make it more morally appealing, was the exact quote on IMDb, because apparently the novel, and it seems like actually the novel, since you read it, was more like going towards just anarchy, and that was it, whereas in the film it was portrayed a little bit more as not anarchy but freedom. And I don't really want to get into an actual political discussion of, you know, what's better or what that means or whatever, But one of the other changes, apparently Evie was 16, as you said, younger, but a prostitute.
Yep.
And illiterate. I don't know why that's important.
I think probably just like to like, I don't know why they would put that in the IMDb quotes. From what I remember, I think it's more just about like
illiterate prostitute is exactly what it's
her.
Yeah, the person that wrote it is just like, fuck Evie. No, I mean, I think it's probably more meant to symbolize how like this fascist regime is like, you can't learn anything about anything,
Sure.
like you just have to trust us. But like, it's weird they would include that.
I mean, in that case, I would assume most people are illiterate.
Exactly.
Not just Evie.
Just
No, Evie
the
only is
16-year-old
illiterate and a prostitute. Yeah.
And apparently, her boss, Gordon Dietrich, who's played by Stephen Fry, was also her lover in the book.
Yes.
The
which is a nice change in
16-year-old.
this. Yeah.
Anywho, I'm happy
And they
that
definitely
he was
hinted
just
that.
a nice little gay man who also hated the government. That made me very happy, and I wasn't expecting that at all. I was a little scared when she showed up to his house that he was gonna like secretly call the cops on her or something. I don't know. There was a weird look on his face, but when it was revealed that he was an ally, love it. I was very pleased, and and then heartbroken, but whatever, we'll get there.
Yeah. No, that was a great twist. That's another, like, again, one of the changes I think that really like helps the source material, where it's
Definitely.
like, yeah, it's a really good. I think like at the end of the day, the biggest thing about this, and you kind of alluded to this, Dan, is it still manages to have that whole like V is not the central character. He's not the hero. He's just like this force of nature representing like the opposing reaction. But
the Joker.
he kind of is like the Joker.
When you think about it, like, and even like his sorry
He
to
is
cut
like
you off.
the Joker. Actually, now that you say it,
He's like the non-villain. Like, he's not a hero, but he's not a villain like the Joker. He's,
No.
I guess, the anti-hero equivalent of what the Joker is.
Definitely.
And even like his V sign that he leaves everywhere, especially when it's in a circle, is very reminiscent of the anarchy symbol, just upside down.
definitely.
So
Definitely.
I mean, it's definitely purposeful.
Oh yeah. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like all the changes I think are more around Evie becoming like a actual protagonist and an actual like central character that makes choices rather than is just sort of like seduced by terrorism, and it's almost like doesn't have a say. Like I even think obviously there's the whole middle section which is like a twist on a twist on a twist, which is great. With her, like, V having captured her and doing all that, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
but also
and then
horrifying.
him going like, "But you asked for this, right?"
Yeah, I know.
Insanity.
Which I want to talk about their relationship a little bit because I had a funny discovery that made me laugh so hard. But we'll get there. I'll say maybe But what I love about that is like she does leave. Like she doesn't like. It's not just like, well, I guess I'm doing this now. It's like she has to like make the choice to come back to it and commit to it and commit to the cause, and I thought that was great. Again, just adding more agency to her as a protagonist, which is it's way more important in like a screenplay in a film as opposed to a book where you can have it be a bit more like you're not necessarily dialed in on one character. It's more like idea based, which is what the novel's like compared to this. So.
And I do love when, like, after she leaves and we get that montage going into the third act of everything building and Evie just taking in everything that's happened since her capture, and you see the moment that she decides she's going to return to the fight. Yeah. And that whole montage is fantastic. It might be my favorite, like, section of this whole movie.
It's great, and it's also, like, horrifyingly close to real life. Like... When like the little
a lot
girl,
of this movie is
I know. Well, there's a lot. First of all, there being a whole like weaponized virus to get control of people and stuff. Which I'm not saying COVID's a hoax,
I hadn't even
but,
thought
like,
of that actually.
When they were talking about like a weaponized virus, I was like, oh god damn it, god fucking damn it. But like, yeah, with like the little girl in the V mask getting shot by the officer, and then like the whole town rallying to like be like, nah, fuck the police. I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like we can't this book was written in the 80s and then this adaptation was written in the early 2000s and we're still goddamn here. Like we're still dealing with this.
And what was I gonna say? I also like I really enjoyed the depiction of their media influence. I just found it really interesting how every single time a tragedy happened, they were the first thing they were doing is writing a fake story to like cover it up. It's like like they're brainstorming like a writer.
It was like a writer's room.
What's
yeah.
this one gonna be?
Yeah.
But it was
That was
also
great.
interesting how they depicted how natural it had become for them. Like, there wasn't even a second of like, oh, should we change this? It was like, no, we're changing it. And the Chancellor almost always had like a million stories in his back pocket to make it into something more desirable.
Which, dare I say, very 1984-esque. Actually, I have to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, his
Very
face on the screen.
Oh, yeah. No. Like, yeah. Well, I remember I actually read V for Vendetta right after reading 1984. Because I remember, like, I had always heard that it was, like,
what
similar
kind of
themes.
mindset were you in?
It was grade 12.
That must have been a depressing...
Yeah, I mean, it was
That
grade 12.
checks out.
I was depressed. I was wearing black all the time. And I have the
Makes
fucking...
so
I have
much
them,
sense.
like, I actually have the Guy Fawkes mask.
Oh, yeah.
It came with my copy of V.
Amazing.
But
Wait, the book or the movie?
The book.
Oh.
But it's a good, it is a good companion piece, I feel like. Like, if you were ever to read V, I would also read 1984, because, like, the themes of it very much, like, play off each other. And it's also fun because 1984 was written in the 40s, and then this was actually written in the 80s by Alan Moore. So it's like, look at that. It is the 80s now, and we're writing a story about, like, what's going on. Because also, again, just to add in, like, the book was very heavily based on, at the time, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of England, yes? And she was a hyper-conservative, and Alan Moore, obviously, just a fucking bleeding liberal, hated her guts, and so was like, fuck this person. And then, when it was adapted in the 2000s, it was very much based on, like, George Bush and the Iraq War and all that. So,
There's always something to compare it
There's
to.
always something. There's always something to compare it to. But that was sort of why they ended up, I think, going forward with it in the early 2000s, was specifically because of everything happening with the Iraq War. And I think the Wachowskis, like, kind of pitched it and changed the story a little bit in terms of the screenplay and added some of those, like, surveillance elements, because none of that's in the book. But in this, there's a lot of, like, big surveillance, like, we're coming to get you. And, and I think that's what ultimately was, like, a big factor in the studio going forward with it.
I think that's cool how, like, so you said 1984 was written in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to the 80s, people are like, this is still super relevant, and we need a new iteration of this. So Alan Moore was like, I'm going to write a new story that is very reminiscent of this, but kind of the next, like, passing the torch almost. Like, this is the new 1984. Not that it, like, not 1984 is obsolete or anything, but it's very for the much new generation.
Yeah, it's a companion piece. It's like a soft reboot, whatever. It kind of is a soft reboot of 1984.
Franchise revival?
It is a franchise revival, yeah. Yeah.
I also just want to say... Oh, sorry, were you going to say something? My thing is unrelated, so you can go first.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging my hand raise.
I
just
saw
one
that.
more thing that apparently was different in the novel that I wanted to ask you about before we move too far away from the Alan Moore and comparisons. Apparently, the Chancellor left all important decisions to Fate, a supercomputer, in the novel. Fate F.A.T.E. I don't know what it stands for.
Classic.
But apparently
Classic
that happened
acronyms.
in the novel, and that was taken out of the movie to make him seem more inherently evil, and obviously to make all of the horrible decisions he was making be all of his own, so that his death felt more warranted. But anyway, what's that about?
I do not even remember that. So it was probably just like... I
did notice the blank stare when I said Fate. I was like, what?
Yeah, I was like... It was probably...
And the fact that you went, oh,
that's a fun fact. It was probably in, like, one page. It was probably, like, a throwaway reference or something. Okay. But I will say, like, yeah, I think, again, going back to probably why Alan Moore didn't like this, like, the evil fascist government is so obviously an evil fascist government, whereas I think in the book they... Not that they're sympathetic, like, they still do shitty things, but nobody is, like, a comical villain the way that, like, for example, like, the speaker that goes out on all those public shows and is basically just Donald Trump, like, nobody's, like, to that extreme. Everyone's just a bit more like, no, like, we're doing the right thing. Like, we vehemently believe we're doing the right thing, but it's
vehemently
believe they're doing the right thing. Yeah, so I believe that computer thing because, yeah, it makes the Chancellor less of, like, a cartoon villain, like, Overlord 1984 style, and a bit more just, like, a guy that is kind of dumb and is sort of just blindly going along with the cause for no reason.
Because he saw the opportunity.
Because he saw the opportunity to.
When everyone was, like, they needed to turn to someone.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
This is my political opportunity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably it also probably is a little bit of a metaphor again for like hyper conservatism as a mode of operation where you just have like a set of beliefs that you don't even necessarily understand but you just follow. So like maybe like the whole fate thing is a commentary on that, like on like faith.
I think so.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh yeah, I just believe this and we're just gonna do it now. Like, so I'm sure that's why that was included too.
And that makes sense because even in the movie version, I think if I'm remembering correctly, the Chancellor mentions, or maybe it's the news anchor or someone, how like religion is very like tied in with their political party's like whole
beliefs motif. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely in there too.
But I was gonna say, I couldn't believe the similarities to Batman Begins in this movie.
Okay.
And not just because it came out in the same year, which is wild. But like
great year for movies.
The whole I like the energy of this movie of one figure, and obviously as we've talked about, V is not a hero, so Batman isn't like as an equivalent to V. But there are definitely similarities of people looking to this one person in a city that has gone to shit and like inspiring the people. And I know that the line, I don't remember, you'll know what it is, but the line at the end of him talking about the idea under the mask, like, it's under this mask is not flesh and bone or something.
Yeah, there's an idea
here,
and ideas are bulletproof.
And I think there's a similar line in Batman Begins. It's when Ducard is talking to Bruce Wayne at the beginning in the prison, and he's like, if you devote yourself to an idea or whatever, you become something else entirely.
Yeah.
And it's like these two movies came out in the same year.
I'll do you one better. When Bruce is talking to Alfred, he literally says, as a man, I'm flesh and blood.
Yeah.
But as an idea, as a symbol, I can be everlasting. Like,
exactly.
It's like the same line of dialogue, but I mean, it's great.
Yeah, and then also the other thing I wanted to mention was how either intentionally or unintentionally this movie definitely has to have influenced Captain America the Winter Soldier, because that is also a political thriller untying like this
Hugo
web
Weaving is in both of them?
No, actually he's not in that one, but
he's in
the first one. Yeah.
Just because of like the whole like web of lies, conspiracy, government conspiracy, political thriller.
I don't think that's a movie similarity. I just think that's a life
theme.
A theme in life.
Well, yeah, I guess a life too.
Maybe that's true. Maybe I mean, well, that's probably true. But I don't know. I got heavy vibes, not in terms of similar tone, but in terms of subject matter. Watching this as watching Winter Soldier. I
can see that. I think because Hydra in Winter Soldier is definitely portrayed as almost like kind of like a fascist regime in a way, but it's like a secret fascist regime.
It's secret. That's the main difference.
That's I definitely could see that. But yeah, like not knowing who to trust, and because there's elements of that too with the detective character that's sort of like I'm trying to figure stuff out and nobody's letting me and I don't know what the fuck to do. So that subplot definitely felt very Winter Soldier-esque.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of the detective, did you recognize the other detective?
Oh, I recognize the other detective. Carol, did you recognize the other detective?
Oh God.
The partner?
Like, he looked familiar. I will say that. Do I know who he is?
Do you know where from?
Absolutely
No, not necessarily. Like, I don't even know his name, but have you seen him in anything?
Yes.
Okay.
But ask me what, and I could not tell you.
He's Inspector Lestrade in the Sherlock Benedict Cumberbatch show.
Oh.
And that's the only other thing I've seen him in.
Yeah.
Is he not the prime minister that fucks the pig in Black Mirror?
No.
Or is that someone else?
No, that's Rory Kinnear, I think.
You're right. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. I don't know why I thought that was him too. I thought those people were the same.
Well, they don't look that different.
Yeah.
They're both British.
Close enough.
Yeah. Older men.
All right.
White.
That's true. It's the Dumbledore all over again, Carol.
Oh no.
Oh my God.
Okay, but I wasn't the one who thought they were the same person. That was you this time.
I know. Okay, but Carol, you brought up Hugo Weaving.
Yes.
This motherfucker does not miss in
Especially
I didn't know
year,
it was
right?
him until after.
So good. He is so good at
Obviously,
this.
because I didn't see his face. How could I know?
Yeah. Well, it's
you never see his face.
It's essentially like like a voice performance, like as if you were voicing like just like a fucking animated character or something, because you never see him. But he is phenomenal in this.
So many different voices at one point, especially when he's imprisoning Evie.
Yeah,
and he's like he's pretending to be like a bunch of different people. Wow.
He's so great.
All those different accents.
That's why I was like, oh, at one point I thought maybe it could be him, and then I was like, no, the voice is different. It can't be. As if I thought that he couldn't modulate his voice.
That good.
Yeah. No, he's that good. And also just like brings such a like level of charm to a character that should be completely charmless because he's like a psychopath. But like just
and
like he's
has
so
no
like
facial expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that he's in a mask the entire time, and he's such an engaging character nonetheless. Great.
So good.
And just the early 2000s apparently was the era of Hugo Weaving.
Oh yeah,
The Matrix and Lord of the Rings and this and
Red Skull.
Oh yeah. Well, that was a bit later.
Yeah, a bit later, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so amazing.
Good stuff.
Everyone's really good at this. This is one of my favorite Natalie Portman performances. She's
Me
like
too.
really strong in this. Like
I
even
was
with
a
doing
little
an English
scared
accent
about the
and
British
stuff.
accent. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it
you get
was
used
okay.
to it though. Like
Yeah.
she just kind of disappears into the role.
Yeah, she held it together.
This was hot off of
Star Wars?
Revenge of the Sith, right?
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah, it was.
Actually, same year, I think.
Same year as Revenge of the Sith, although it's...
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time
she was
does
probably-
not make sense to me. Time is not
She was
linear.
probably like, thank God, a real film role. She barely has anything to do in Revenge of the Sith.
Oh no,
right?
she just dies. Yeah, she shows up, gets choked out.
She's just there to die.
She's pregnant,
And
dies,
give birth to Luke and Leia.
and say Luke and Leia. Yeah, that's what she's there to do.
Well, that's important,
bless.
I think.
Well,
It's important
it's sad
because
that
we
it's
like
important.
Luke and Leia.
Yeah, exactly. Not because Natalie Portman's character is anything.
Yeah.
That was our Star Wars quota.
Yeah, we did it.
So do you think in conjunction with Batman Begins, this must have been like the first good, okay, I don't
Modern?
know. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't look up like when in 2005 each of those movies came out, but I would like we've talked about how Batman Begins was like the first actually good superhero movie, and then I would say this isn't a superhero movie, but it's probably like the first good comic book movie, like really, really good comic book movie. I know like people have a soft spot for like Batman '89 and the
No, I mean this is so much better. But
Superman movie from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
'70s, but in terms of like a movie that has aged very well, even in terms of its production, like looking back on Batman '89 and Superman, like they've clearly are of their time.
Yeah, definitely.
So
This does not feel like a 2005 movie at
No.
all. Which is like, yeah, it just goes to the timelessness of it. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it is up there with Batman. I think as being one of the first like truly timeless, great comic book movies that you don't really feel the age of. And I think the subject matter helps too with a lot of that. But I also think we talked about this with The Matrix a little bit. Like when you intentionally stylize something so specifically, it helps it be timeless, as opposed to like just doing whatever the style of the time is. At like, for example, a lot of the early 2000s stuff, like the X-Men movies, that very clearly are from the early 2000s because they have so much of that like built into it. Whereas I think like, even though the Wachowskis, I know, didn't direct it, they just wrote the screenplay, but they were also producers on it. So you got to imagine that they had some level of say in a lot of...
they to me are like Aaron Sorkin, where it's whenever they write a movie, it's the Wachowskis movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like taking some of the elements of the Matrix, but not fully, not to the point where it's a ripoff, but a lot of the action feels Matrix-esque. And
I will say
a
the
lot of visual
rain
style.
scene was extremely Matrix feeling, with the like slow-mo raindrops falling
Okay.
on
Lightning
her
bolt.
face.
Okay. I will say, when like when she walked out and stuff, I was like, oh, this is a good scene. And then there was like a slow-mo raindrop, and I was like, god damn it. I was like, why did we need the slow-mo couldn't we have just let the scene play?
Well,
Also,
especially like I thought when that happened that slow-mo scene would last a little longer, but it seemed almost too abruptly cut off. So then I was like, what's the point? Just to show that technologically you can do that, I guess.
No, exactly. It was
Just
such
felt
like
they
a
were
weird
showing
insert.
off.
Yeah, I agree. But then also, one of my like tiny minor criticisms of this does not detract from the movie at all. But when that rain scene was happening, and like as she's standing there with the rain falling on her, And very clearly, if you have even like an ounce of like storytelling understanding and whatever, you understand that like rain falling on a person is normally used to symbolize like rebirth and baptism and like becoming the person they're going to be.
Trope.
It's a trope. It is a classic trope. I'm fine with it. It's a good one. But like when she's standing there doing that and then they like cut back to V like being born in fire with like insert shots, I was like, guys, we got it. Like I don't think anyone missed that. I don't think we needed to see the direct parallel. Like I think, again, if you just kind of understand, like, oh yeah, like in V's origin, like he was born from fire and she's being born from water, and like like we get it.
And fire and water will meet in the middle and
create steam. No, but
that's
like
what I was gonna say.
Yeah, yeah, it just seemed a little bit to me like they showed this to the studio, and the studio was like, I don't get it. Like, why are we spending so much time on this rain scene? And then they were like, oh,
maybe because they spent so much money and effort to film the rain scene, and they were like, we can't just use it once.
Maybe.
Or the fire scene. They're like, this is too sick of a shot. I want to put this. Like,
this is too dope of a shot.
I want to put it in. It is a dope shot.
I do need to say, shout out to the stunt double who was in the fire scene, because he actually walked through fire wearing fire-resistant gel only and a G-string. Yeah. That's it. Naked. Damn. Other than gel and a G-string, which is iconic to me.
Yeah.
Jeez.
No, that's sick.
So I think it was deserved that they wanted to show that off more than once. I mean,
fair.
In a storytelling way, it was probably unnecessary, but I do understand that they were like, we have it, might as well use it.
Yeah.
It was also pretty hype, though, not gonna lie.
It was hype. Yeah, it's definitely hype. But yeah, I'm so triggered now by like studio no decisions. The reason being,
but you
like,
don't
I've always been
know what they are.
No, I don't. But here's the thing: is I'm telling you, it's even worse than we think. And here's why. This is a total non sequitur. I don't give a shit. We're keeping it in. I'm not editing it out. But like,
Love Alive pod. We're not editing anything out.
Yeah, we're not editing anything. There is a doc on Amazon for the James Bond music, and it's all about like. It's all about like going through the history of James Bond music.
Oh, that's new, isn't it?
It's brand new. I just watched it the other night, and it's like framed with, they keep intercutting stories of like Billie Eilish and Phineas making this newest song. So they keep kind of like cutting back to that because that's present day, and then they go back and revisit other songs and stuff. When they were talking about Casino Royale, okay, the guy that was doing the music for not Chris Cornell, but like the guy that did the arrangement for Casino Royale, was talking about how, when they like screened it for the studio was like, people aren't going to get that we're saving the James Bond theme for the last scene in the movie. They were like, people aren't going to get that. That's going to go over people's head. And the guy was like, I almost lost my job fighting for that to be the case, because if we had used the James Bond theme elsewhere in the movie and not in that last scene, it fucking like completely deflates that last scene. Like, that last scene works because it's like, and Bond is here, this is an origin story. But so like, again, like here, whenever I hear stories like that, there was like, Sorkin talks about like when he was writing The West Wing, that like some of the studio notes he got was like, hey, like, could the president like blow up in a plane? And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? Like, what show do you think we're making? So yeah, like,
isn't the president the main character
in
that show?
Like it's an ensemble, but he's like in the ensemble.
That's so weird too that they would ever want to kill. Usually they'd never want to kill off a main character for the show's success.
So anyway,
do you think people in movie studios have ever seen a movie before?
Dude, honestly,
they
people
don't have
that
time.
work in movie. They honestly have like worse instincts than regular people.
Than just the general audience.
Like the general audience like hears the shit and is like, that's dumb. Why would you ever do that? And yeah, so anyway, that's why whenever I see something that's even somewhat like questionable or like, no, I already understood that, why are you doing that? I'm like, oh no, definitely someone must have suggested it. Because like the people that run studios are clearly just like imbeciles.
Oh yeah.
Like they actually know nothing, so.
That's inarguable.
Yeah.
I just want to backtrack a little bit when we were talking about how, much like The Matrix, this movie having its own identity and sense of style only helps its aging process. And I'd be amiss to not bring up the fact that there is a direct comparison in video games with that on what your graphic art style is. So, for example, like games that go for hyper-realistic animation of human beings, like, as much as I love it, The Last of Us will age more poorly in look than, like, a Mario game.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Mario isn't even trying to be emulating real life, whereas one is, and, like, the fact that it is so far in the other direction means it'll only ever succeed in its look. And I think it's the same thing of, like, obviously for live action movies where it's not a direct comparison of, like, animation, but in terms of, like, the style, the look of the cinematography, the color correction, all that sort of stuff is the equivalent. So I think you're absolutely right. Like The Matrix, like this, the fact that it drives so hard in its own direction means it's much less susceptible to the process of aging.
Oh yeah.
So
100%.
I think that's clear watching it in 2022.
Yeah, where it
still enjoying it.
Looks like it could have come out last year. Like, if you told me this movie came out last year, I would have been like, yeah, all the themes are on point, the visual style, like, this feels like the type of... It feels better than the type of movie that would have come out last year. Like, because everything that came out...
The Matrix
I think
Resurrections came out last
assume
year.
it had a smaller budget if you told me it came out last year.
Well, yeah, but that's...
Sure.
Simply for the camera
that's the whole
quality
thing of,
or
like,
whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's fair.
every blockbuster budget is now inflated. So, like,
Yeah.
if it's not a $200 million movie, it was an indie movie.
Definitely. And also I feel like we've talked so much about, like, the mid-budget movie disappearing, but the nice thing about that is you cannot then rely on shit that's not going to age well. So, like, a movie like this where so much of it is in camera and we're doing real stunts, and even, like, the stuff that is digital, like some of the visual effects and the fighting, is so stylized that it doesn't really matter, as opposed to now where, yeah, it's just like, man, you see the behind the scenes of, like, some of the more recent Marvel movies, and it's just like Chris Hemsworth and Taika Waititi standing on a giant green screen.
And for what? For a city shot? Like,
for a city shot.
You're on
I
a
know.
city street. Why are you green screening this?
it looks
It's
so
awful.
depressing.
I know.
It's very 1984.
It is very 1984. Speaking of depressing, though, there is, like, the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's and you've seen this, but it's the behind the scenes of The Hobbit.
Oh, yeah.
Where Serene McKellen, obviously, who played Gandalf in Lord of the Rings and, like, loves the source material so much, had such a great time doing it. And then in The Hobbit, it was mostly, like, green screen and not a lot of practical effects and whatever. And so there's a scene of him, like, literally just in, like, a green screen room acting to nothing because they were just gonna, like, do everything else digitally, and he literally just, like, breaks down and, like, starts, like, crying, like, at the table because he's like, this is fucked, like, this is not acting, like, this is ridiculous.
Well, it was this is not acting, and he was, like, the only one not acting with anyone else who felt lonely.
Super isolating.
Compared to, like,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings,
That's so
where so much
sad.
of that was more practical, and they used, like, camera angles and playing tricks on your eyes and stuff.
Which is why those movies still look good.
Yes.
And
I mean, not that The Hobbit looks, like, bad or
no,
anything, but
it looks fine.
The Lord of the Rings still looks surprisingly good for...
Yeah. Yep, definitely. All right, guys, what do we want to talk? Can I can I say something dumb now to
Sure,
get
of
us back
course.
on track talking about this movie? So again, the book doesn't really have much of a romance to it. It's more like, if anything, the seduction is more like being seduced by, like, extremism, and because obviously, again, with Evie being, like, 16 years old,
Well, and
She
she's
does
taken
not like-
by her boss.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
you know, she can't cheat on
Definitely.
him.
God forbid. Yeah, it would have been very odd to have a actual, like, romance, I love this person type thing. So, in watching this movie this time, and seeing sort of the way some of the romance plays out, with him, like, taking her to the lair, and her being like, let me see behind the mask, and all that, and I just had this thought where I was like, man, this is like V for Vendetta meets Phantom of the Opera. Like, so much of the romance in this is just Phantom of the fucking Opera, which
When he
I love.
punches
Phantom.
the mirror and drops the mask, all I could think was,
Yeah.
wait, is this Phantom? Did the movie
It's so
change?
funny. It's so funny how clearly they took so much inspiration for that, for, like, the romance
But
subplot, which,
that's so
again, I'm fine
random
with.
because it doesn't have anything to do with the plot, you know?
No,
Like, I
yeah.
understand that they wanted to change it to make it a little more sympathetic, but I don't know. It just didn't make sense. I don't think it really added anything to the plot that he was in love with her and she was, I guess, not in love with him because she didn't say it back when he said it, but
Yeah.
there were definitely some feelings there, probably
Yeah.
inspired a bit by Stockholm Syndrome. because of the whole kidnapping and torturing thing. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't really seem necessary, but I'm glad that it didn't go too far. Like, if she was legitimately in love with him by the end and they, like, had sex or something, I would have been out.
Definitely.
Mask on.
I think it does a good enough with the mask on.
Well, the whole outfit on, obviously.
Yeah.
If he's burned to a crisp everywhere else.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. He is burnt to a crisp, eh? Just a crispy boy.
He's like Deadpool.
I was going to say, very Deadpool-esque.
That fire shot, like,
it definitely reminds me of Deadpool.
When I saw that shot, I was like, oh, Deadpool definitely just aped off this. Like, I'm pretty sure they were just like, we're just going to do this, like, this visual style. It looks the same, except you see his dick in Deadpool because, Deadpool, look at my balls. Yeah. I also appreciate the fact that, like, even though they added in the romance subplot, it doesn't go too far into, like love, like, not love, but you know what I mean. Like, they don't, romance. They're not, like, together. It's more just, like you were saying, you alluded to earlier, Dan, like, she helps him find his humanity a little bit, and he helps her, like, remember the cause and get out of the, like, social programming that all of this is okay, and, like,
very Matrix.
It is very Matrix-esque, which is also great. But yeah, and then and
she's bald, like Neo in when he wakes up from the Matrix.
Yeah, she is.
Is that in the book?
I think that's in the book too. I think
we're good.
I'll have to go check. I'll check after. I'll let you know. But yeah, I think it that works, and I like in particular, it's all tied up really nicely. I think in that last moment when whoever she's with, I forget. I think it's the detective, asks like who he was or something, and then she's like, "Oh, well, like he was my dad, he was my mom, he was this person." Like,
yeah, when she just said he was my dad, I was a little scared for a second. I was like, "Wait."
Yeah. No, but I think I think like that scene really tied it all up nicely. Where I was like, "Oh, okay, like I get it. Like the love is more like, because they help each other, and she saw like the part of her in him that was like repressed after all these years and whatnot, which is cool. I think that was a nice addition there."
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad it doesn't go too far as well, but I do think, in that sense, it was necessary. Obviously, it wasn't necessary to be a romantic thing, too, because in the book it's not, and it still works. But, like, the fact that there is just some connection of V to Evie, and it doesn't have to be the other way. It doesn't have to be reciprocated, but I think it is important that he feels it towards her, because that's his whole, like, character arc.
Definitely.
That she helps him, like I said, rediscover his humanity. So in that sense, it's important that we get that so that he actually feels like a different character by the end of this.
Exactly, as opposed to the book where he has no character and just dies as a terrorist, and then she takes up the mantle. Again, intentional, but that doesn't really work in a movie. I mean, like, I guess it could, but it just wouldn't be very like enjoyable to watch. So I think it's a better change for sure.
Yeah, books are different rules. I often find when I especially like when I read the Jurassic Park novel, even like Alan Grant was much more of a static. Yeah, he doesn't really have an arc. I don't know. Most of the characters didn't really have an arc in that book, except for like learning. Like they changed in the sense that they now know dinosaurs exist and were traumatized, but they weren't like their attitudes didn't really change throughout the entire thing. And I think that's just a book thing. Yeah, I like books. I think like just by their nature are allowed to be way more conceptual, and so like characters can just be stand-ins to like talk about conceptual ideas and stuff, whereas movies are pretty strict story structure wise, where it's like no like there has to be some either rejection of change or acceptance of change, and regardless of that, like the ending is dictated by that. So either like you can succeed by accepting change or you can reject change and fail, but like there needs to be that for it to like feel like a cohesive movie. Otherwise it feels like so much of the bullshit indie crap we talk about where it's like just people existing, man, and then it ends, and it's like that's life, baby.
That's life, baby.
Because with films, we're sitting down and watching it. Ideally, obviously for this podcast, not always for me, but in one sitting. So it should be entertaining, and it shouldn't be torturous to do that. Whereas with a book, you know, if there's some parts that are lagging, I can come back to it, take my time. It can take me 10 years to read a book, and that's fine. Yeah. I mean, it never has. That's a little long. But, you know, I could stretch it out, take breaks, reread, whatever, and still maybe be entertained by it in the end if those parts are still worth it narratively.
Yeah.
But Yeah, no,
Yeah,
film's
and with
gotta
books-
keep us engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like you said, you're watching a film ideally in one continuous like stroke, whereas like people would rarely ever finish a book in one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
There's much less of a sense of pacing in a book,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that also connects back to the fact that your characters need to be more static than in a movie, so that you can more easily pick up with them.
Yeah.
And like remember where you left off, because book chapters don't have like previously on this book.
Can you
like,
imagine?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
TV show. So
Exactly.
I think that's all connected. Oops.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because, like, in terms of narrative art forms, like what's comparing movies to books or even comics or whatever, yeah, like, movies, Carol, you kind of alluded to, like, they dictate pace. You know what I mean? Like, in editing, they tell you what the pace is, and whereas, like, with a book or a comic book or whatever, like, you're
Video
dictating
game.
the pace. So it's like, again, like if you pick up a comic, like depends how you want to read it. Some people like to look at the art first and then go back and read the pictures. Some people like to read the words and then go through a page and look at pictures. You can like hang on a panel for as long as you want. Like, and then similar idea with books. Some people like will flip back and like go through another chapter and like re-expose themselves to something. But a movie is like just one like stream thing from start to finish, and the pace is dictated to you. And yeah, so you have to make those types of changes. But that's why I said up top, I think this is like one of the strongest adaptations I've ever seen, and because the Wachowskis are, when they want to be, talented writers, and when they don't want to be, aren't. But I think also though, like early on, like when they were younger, they've talked so much about like graphic novels' influence on them. Like even The Matrix was inspired by a lot of different graphic novels they were into, and anime and stuff like that. So
I see that.
I fully believe that they were like fans of this forever, probably since the 80s, and probably have like spent so much time thinking about the ways in which you could make a movie out of it. Like this seems like a passion project to me, which is probably why it worked so well.
For sure. Yeah. What other Wachowski stuff have you seen?
So
Way to put him on the spot.
well, I can tell you what I haven't seen because it's looked bad and gotten bad reviews. I did not see Speed Racer because I could not give a shit, and that looked awful. I did not see that one with Channing Tatum where he's like an angel or something.
Jupiter
angel?
Ascending.
Jupiter Ascending.
Oh, I heard
Yeah.
bad things.
I did too. Did not see that. There's the one with Tom Hanks in the boat. It's like
Captain Phillips.
no, not Captain Phillips. It's Cloud Atlas.
that a
Cloud Atlas.
place?
Oh,
Oh,
that was Sully.
That was Sully. That was Sully.
Tom Hanks has been in every type of vehicle.
Has he been on a train? Is there a train Tom Hanks movie?
Toy Story 3.
Uh,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Polar Express.
Oh,
Polar
fuck
Express.
off. Okay,
How
great.
did I not jump to that one first?
Well, there
Guys.
we are. He's been on every motor transport. Have either of you guys seen Cloud Atlas or like any
No.
of the other Wachowski
I've
stuff?
seen Cloud Atlas.
Is it good?
It's fine.
Okay.
I don't remember
Yeah,
it
that's
being
all.
remarkable. I don't remember it being the worst thing ever. But I
Okay.
also don't really, I don't know. It doesn't have a very distinct memory in my head, so I'm going to say it was fine.
Yeah.
I have heard with that one, people have seen it. They've been like, it was okay, but yeah, there's like some stuff in that movie to take away. I don't know. But like Jupiter Ascending got horrible reviews all around. I know that. The only stuff I've seen is the Matrix movies and this, I think, from them.
Yeah. I think that's just Matrix and this for me too, which is their best stuff anyway. So
Of course.
doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they kind of like don't really make great stuff. But I mean, honestly, like I feel like most like truly auteur directors, this is like the trajectory where it's like they come out strong, which is absolute fucking bangers that change everything, and then they just can't shake that. I don't know if it's like getting into their own heads about like having to constantly outdo themselves and push boundaries rather than do something a bit more safe that probably would be better. Like I'm thinking, for example, of just like even George Lucas, who not that he was ever like as talented as the Wachowskis, but like at the end of the day, like I know American Graffiti and the first Star Wars were both like big successes that sort of came from him, and obviously he had a lot of help and stuff, but is not like an untalented dude, but then just like could not get out of his own head and just has made like garbage since. And I don't know, the same thing. I mean, you could even argue, I wouldn't argue garbage, but even like Spielberg in the last 15 years, like what has he done that's anything other than like something weird? And
it's either been pretty generic blockbuster or Oscar bait movie.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, like a lot of these people that have like these revolutionary beginnings of their career just can't seem to pull it together after the fact. I don't know.
I mean, I will say, not just statistically, not everything you write can be good.
Oh, definitely. But it is weird that there's not lesser than people, but I feel like people that are like very consistent with what they do. Like, for example, I'll put Sorkin on there. Like, Sorkin's worst thing and Sorkin's best thing are not like worlds apart. You know what I mean? They're all within a certain range of like, this is what I do, and it's usually around here. As opposed to like a George Lucas or a Wachowski's, where it's like, hey, this is like a revolutionary piece of cinema. This is unwatchable garbage. Like, which I guess is just how it goes, right? If you're gonna make something that revolutionary, you have to have the instincts to also be able to make something that's complete garbage. Like, I guess.
But I think also because a lot of the Wachowski stuff specifically, not to speak on any of the other director, writer people we've mentioned, but with their stuff, it's mostly fantasy adjacent, I have noticed. And I think that is a genre just in general where the ideas are kind of limitless because it is fantasy. Yeah. And so that can be helpful or a hindrance at the same time, because you could come up with some crazy shit that just doesn't work or is straight out dumb, and like maybe you think it could be something brilliant, but like especially it's hard to translate from a screenplay to the screen when it's something so fantastical that doesn't exist. And I think that's probably why it is so hit or miss, because you can do anything, and obviously they do try crazy things, and some of them are just dumb. Sorry.
Yeah.
But also this is coming from a person who isn't obsessed with fantasy, so maybe that's just my take.
No, that tracks. I think you see it a lot of the time in that stuff, right? Where it's just, I mean, even James Cameron. I mean, we don't have to get into it, but you know what I mean.
He needs
just
to be
people that get so hung up on
go back to Titanic, James Cameron.
Yeah,
I want another romance.
Like, yeah,
but he's done blue people alone.
Romance, fantasy. He's done like
sci-fi,
an action. The Aliens movie was just an action movie.
Yeah.
I mean, also sci-fi, but straight up an action.
Well, but then Terminator is like a sci-fi movie, sci-fi horror. So like
with time travel and stuff.
Yeah, like I don't know.
That's range.
It's a big range
for
right
better
there.
Or for worse.
And also range in quality sometimes.
Yeah, it's more like one quality and then a just trough that he falls into. But yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What was with the egg sandwich thing?
Okay, this is a
How
great
did they
question.
both make the same thing for her? And they both greeted her the same way. Instead of saying, like, good morning or whatever, they said, like, bonjour, mademoiselle. Both of them.
Mm-hmm.
How
That's
and why?
That's a great question. Fantastic.
Because she points it out, and he jokes that he's V, but obviously he isn't. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand.
I think, and I can't remember if that's in the book. No, it's probably not. I don't know. Who cares? But, like, I think that's probably to go with the idea that, like to what she said at the end, that, like V represents, like, the similarities in all these people to understand that everything that's going on is wrong and, like, we need to stand up above it. So that's probably more of, like, a metaphorical thing meant to be, like, oh, like, V is like this person. V is just a person, like, almost like to humanize him a little bit. Like, oh yeah, he's just a guy that makes eggs, like the way this guy makes eggs.
But why wouldn't they at least then have eggs and toast presented in a normal way? It just seems like a really weird direction to have it be something not common. Well, like, how often do you see eggs and toast made like that?
That's not uncommon.
No,
that's a dish.
Yeah, that's a dish.
Eggs in a nest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
For me.
But I think the specificity of it is
egg lore.
egg iceberg explained.
How deep does it go?
How deep does the egg iceberg go? No, I think the specificity of it is what's supposed to get the point across that, like, that like, oh, like these people like are all similar in this way. But I don't. I know what you mean. Like, it is sort of just like a. Because it's almost like the movie flirts with 1 second with the idea of, like, are we trying to imply that this guy's V, but then immediately shuts that down?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, I feel like that metaphor of, like, V being a stand-in for anybody and this, like, the similarities of, like, those people and the humanization of V, like, I think that all comes across without the egg scene. So, it does seem a little bit heavy-handed.
And honestly, I don't think I'd be as mad at it or if they hadn't explicitly said at the very beginning of the movie how V's like, I don't believe in coincidence, like, I'm here to save you specifically because your name is EV or whatever, and so then to have this thing that seems like such a coincidence happen later on, I'm like, come on, you guys, you put that your MO is that you don't believe in coincidence at the beginning of this film, and then you put something that I feel can only be explained as some insane coincidence, maybe in your brains to tell a larger story or theme or whatever, but I don't know. I was just like, pick a lane, people.
Well, maybe it's not maybe rebellious people like eggs in a net.
And that's why I don't think it's common, because I'm not rebellious.
Or maybe it's trying to imply that, like, V and Dietrich, like, are aware of each other, because it's after this that he does, like, completely throws his show, right, and does the skit that gets him killed.
I loved that. That was so
I love
hilarious.
That too. That was so great. It's a very very, like, Network moment, the movie Network, where the guy, like, goes up and basically just goes on a rant in the middle of his TV show about how fucked everything is. Like, it's like that, but yeah, I wonder if maybe that there's maybe trying to be a little bit of a deeper thing there of, like, Evie isn't the only person that V has, like, tried to like, inspire or get on his side, or, like, maybe they have a deeper connection, but, like, V is present in all of us in some way, you know? Like, V's been around. I don't know. It could be, but, like, they never explain it more than that, and I've never thought of it more than that, but the coincidence line, Carol, is a very good point, like, because they specifically say that line many times, and then to have this coincidence seems like, oh, maybe they're trying to, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to read it. At the very least, at least it's, like, interesting in some way. It makes you think about it, even if we don't really get an answer to it. And it is, like, a small enough detail that even without an answer, it doesn't fuck up the movie. But yeah, that's a good question. And there is no, I think, definitive answer as to what it is.
Yeah, that's cool. I think I like the headcanon that he was a previous like, protege.
Yeah.
To V.
Yeah.
But because one of you brought it up, I can't remember. I made a little mini list of the V symbolism that I want to talk about.
Go for it. Hold on. So, read it while I go to the bathroom. Since this is live, I won't stop you. I'll listen while I pee. Perfect. Read off your list. Go for it. I'll be back, listeners.
Fantastic.
Right. Yeah, so first and foremost, obviously the 5th of November, V5. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
The name Evie, very much, to me, like, it just resembles, like, the new V.
Yeah.
E doesn't need to mean anything specific, but the fact that it's something preceding the sound V just is reminiscent of, like, the next generation of the thing. Mm-hmm. And also the name Valerie, we haven't talked about yet, but the other prisoner that V not met, but got the note from when he was imprisoned and tortured, who inspired his whole, like, plight, basically. His cell number 5V, which is so cool.
That detail is, like, my favorite reveal in the movie.
That panning shot, or the dolly shot going across the doors as they're talking, and it lands on door number V.
It's so good.
And then lastly, the V in the fireworks at the end, which I forgot about.
Oh yeah,
which is cool.
That's a nice touch.
The final shot of the movie.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful moment.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the V rhyme at the beginning of the movie?
I have it in quotes that I want to read at the end of the episode.
Okay, wonderful. We should do that. It's one of those things for me where when it started, I was like, is this cringy? But then it went on so long that I was like...
and I was like, I applaud you, honestly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Where I was like, You guys thought of a lot of V words to put in there, so you know what? Fuck it. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And I don't know how I feel about it exactly, but for better or for worse, I had to read it because it's just so, like, I didn't know that existed that many V words.
I know. It's great. But also, like, it does... I think the reason why, like, it has that little bit of cringiness to it is because it implies that, like,
He's practiced this.
V has practiced this and has this whole speech memorized.
Maybe he did it before
on his hands.
That's true.
He did it before with Gordon.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe he did that.
Okay, so now that I'm back, I have comments. One, in that I'm glad you pointed out the name Evie, but I don't know if this was an IMDb user who read into it way too much, but they also pointed out that Evie's name is spelled Evey, E being the fifth letter of the alphabet, V obviously being the number 5, and then Y is the 25th letter of the alphabet, the square root of which is 5.
That's fun. Honestly,
I have no idea if that was on purpose.
I wouldn't put it past Alan Moore to do that on purpose.
But that was also a part of IMDb, and I found that hilarious.
Unfortunately, the name only has 4 letters in it.
Yeah.
If it had 5 letters in it, that would have been perfect. Yeah. Shit, what was I literally had a thought, and it evaporated into nothingness. Okay, I want to talk about... Here's what we'll do. Since we're talking about all this V stuff, I would really like to talk about, all the, the backstory and that whole thing with, the cell and all that.
Because the poisoning of the children, or the spreading of the virus at the school, everything that incited the rise of the party.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, very fucked up.
Yep.
We do not support that. We are not fans of that whatsoever. No, but speaking to the idea of V saying that there are no coincidences, is the woman's name being Valerie and him being in the 5th cell
a coincidence?
That is such a coincidence, but then it also made me think
she was V and went through some gender change or something for a little bit, for a second. When they started introducing that story, I was like, she also has black hair. Her name starts with a V. I know they mentioned that whatever they did to these people made them forget their origins. So I was like, I don't know, maybe they did that.
That is true.
And I mean, all of his body's burned, so, it could be a woman, I guess. The voice would be hard to explain, but I don't know.
A woman with Hugo Weaving's voice.
Yeah, so obviously that wasn't the case, but that's initially what I was thinking. But there would still be the coincidence.
There'd still be the coincidence of the name Valerie in the cell V.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that also... Okay, so first of all, I love that because it's it's what helps so much with the twist on a twist, where when it's revealed that this whole thing has been a twist and that V has been torturing her or whatever, it immediately clicks in oh my god, the woman's name was Valerie. Of course. Of course he just wrote this bullshit thing. But then when he reveals that it's actually true, that's oh, okay, you subverted it there. No, that actually was. But then it makes me think, was her name actually Valerie? Or did he just, change details about the story to fit into his V theming?
Was her name on the poster?
I don't think so. It was just a portrait of her. That might be true,
but it was
because
a movie
he even
poster.
has...
He had the movie poster from the film she was in. I can't remember.
Oh shit! You're
right.
You're right. She is in a movie.
Yeah, so I think her name must be true because I don't know if Google exists in this London. But I was gonna say Natalie Portman could have Googled it to see if she was real, but that's a Today plot line, I guess.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe this is his first.
Love?
There are no coincidences thing. You know what I mean? Where it's I'm in the 5th cell and this woman's name starts with a V,
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
And that kind of also ties in with his arc in the movie of realizing not everything, he needs to take a step back. It's yes, sometimes there are just coincidences. And maybe the first thing you ever experienced that you thought wasn't a coincidence, this V thing, was just a coincidence.
Yeah.
And this whole thing is built on a coincidence. And even though it has gone somewhere, you weren't all wrong, but you also need to realize that sometimes things just happen and there's maybe not a purpose to it. But yeah, that could be the thing too. But yeah, I think whether he was Valerie or whether Valerie was just in the cell next to him at one point, I do like the idea of like Valerie being where, or at least partly where he chose his name V from. I think.
Yeah, I think that's cool too.
I just loved all of the gay representation.
Yeah.
Obsessed with that, and I did not see that coming, especially with this being released in 2005. But
I forgot, to be honest.
Yeah, and one of my favorite, because I love Stephen Fry. I don't know why. I don't even really follow like British news or TV. And I only became aware of his existence because of like a YouTuber I used to watch. It's like a very cringy origin story. But apparently he like had a quote that he loved playing this character because he had never been in a film where he got to be beaten up, and he just really wanted to experience that, and that really excited him, and I think that's adorable.
Good for him.
I'm happy he was able to live out that fantasy. Well, also, obviously, his character wasn't homosexual in the novel, and apparently that was a change that he pushed for because, you know, he is pro the LGBTQIA plus all the letters and anti-government. Well, not anti, but, you know, judgmental.
Anti-fascist.
Rightly so, of governments.
Definitely. And then also I think like, because I don't remember there being such a, like you said, like the like gay themes in the book aren't necessarily as strongly there, but then you like, again, like the Wachowskis obviously being members of the LGBT community, even though they weren't at the time, like they weren't like out at the time. Yeah, but you know, because even we talked about in The Matrix how like there was the character switch that was originally going to be like a woman in the real world but a guy in The Matrix or whatever. So like they've always been trying to like put these types of themes in their movies. So the fact that they were actually able, and probably because of like Stephen Fry's support and et cetera, and having a bit more clout at this point in their career, that they were able to like hammer some of that stuff home, which is good. This is a good thing, and it's also I think why this movie like ages pretty well too, because they like it does a good job of representing that in a good way, a way that doesn't feel like shitty. So
it was surprisingly progressive for the year. And I can't believe I forgot about all those elements last time I watched it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's just so much badassery in the movie that you forget about some of the more intricate plot stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. I forgot about it too, but it then on this rewatch, it was like, oh, this is good to see. Helps the movie age.
Talking about the badass stuff, I want to talk about that final fight scene now.
So good.
Because I remembered him being cornered and like somehow outsmarting all those dudes, but I forgot exactly how it played out. And when he went like the guy, what was his name? Creedy is the guy who like tortured him in the prison, and he works for the government. He confronts him, and he's like, "We have like all these guns on you. What are you gonna do?" He's like, "You don't have guns. You have bullets, and by the time you're out of bullets, you better hope to have them reloaded before like I get to you, because you won't have anything else to do." And he takes all the bullets, and it's later revealed that he has like the knight's armor under his
so cool
that he was practicing sword fighting on, and just when the guy's like, "Why won't you die?" and then we get that line of the
beneath this mask there is an idea,
and ideas are bulletproof. So good.
That scene. Okay,
he
so
dies right after, but at
But
least
it's for the
Treaty didn't need to see it. Yeah, he still got his badass moment.
Exactly. I don't remember if the like. I'm sure the line of "You don't have guns, you have bullets," and by the time I'm up, that I don't think that was in the graphic novel. The beneath this mask there is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. Like that is in the novel, but it's a bit more expanded upon, like in the way that a novel would be. There's just more dialogue. But this whole moment to me, again, and I didn't even realize the Wachowskis. I thought they were just producers. I didn't realize they wrote it until we got to the credits. But when this scene started, I was like, "Oh, this is the Matrix dialogue right here. Like, this is fucking sick."
Even a Matrix fight setup.
Oh, I know. It's so Matrix, but it's so good. It's so good, dude. Like, I wish. I mean, I don't, because they just made another Matrix and it was bad. But like, I just wish they like kept making action movies, because my God, they are so good at making like action stuff.
Well, even
and having,
with the like tracking of the knives and the like seeing the motion blur, just so stylized. Respect.
They find a way, because like I was thinking about it when I was watching it, because Carol, I know you like famously hate action movies, but you talk about like action's not what like you particularly
Yeah.
care for. But when I was watching this fight scene, I was like, oh no, Carol's gonna fucking dig this. Like, there's just something about like the way the Wachowskis like set up and pay off action that is so hype that even if you don't give a shit about action, you cannot help but like get hype in those moments. Like,
I think what usually gets me with action is that the scenes feel unnecessarily long and gory and violent, and it isn't even like a focus on the technique of the fighting. Usually it's literally just how many people can we kill, and half the time not even for good reason. And so I think what I appreciate that the Wachowskis did in this, I mean, they didn't direct it, but you know, in this and The Matrix, is that they didn't seem too long, mostly in how stylistic they look, and so I still felt engaged and like it served a purpose. Obviously not that I'm like kill people, but you know.
No, kill people.
So they didn't feel too long and they flew by and I was entertained, so I can't really be mad at that.
Yeah.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. If there's no drama behind your action, no one will give a shit.
Yeah.
If there is, that's what makes a good action scene.
Yep.
If you care for the outcome of the action of the character in the action scene, then you will be engaged. But if you don't, then it's just dumb, often CGI action
schlock.
scene.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why
100%.
it's usually the superhero action scenes that I'm like, I don't care. I know you're saving the world, but your motivation isn't even really to save the world for the good of the people. It's just 'cause it's what you do. And so then there's going to be like 3/4 of the film where you're doing just that, and I don't care.
Yes.
And you know it's only there because of
It has to be.
pacing and
yeah. Which is why the fight scene at the end of The Batman is so fucking good.
Yeah.
Because it is literally everything is shit, the mayor's about to be shot, and then fucking Batman shows up and just fucks those dudes up. And then ultimately has to save Catwoman, who also like is getting fucked up. So like everything in that fight is so motivated. But yeah, and then like the Wachowskis in particular, even thinking to The Matrix, like they do such a good job with their dialogue. Like not even having plot stakes, but of just like setting up the cool moments with dialogue before they happen. It's so good. Like in The Matrix when they talk about, oh, like you're saying I can dodge bullets. No, I'm saying when you're fast enough, like, or I'm saying when you get to that point, you won't have to. So then when he stops the bullets, like it, like you're waiting for that, like not actually waiting, but when that happens, it is like a setup payoff. And then in this, I mean, it happens immediately, but it's so fucking cool when he's like, you better hope that I'm dead after, because I'm gonna fuck you up. And then when he's obviously not dead, it's just like the hype is there where you're like, oh shit, here we go.
like,
You guys
what's gonna follow
You guys
that?
are fucked now. Yeah.
And it was surprisingly violent.
Oh yeah.
The knife stuff
Oh yeah. Also very Joker-esque.
with the knife.
Yeah. You know, killing people with knives, like Heath Ledger's Joker anyway.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say that was a Chris Nolan Joker thing, right?
Yeah, that's not like a. I mean, I'm sure Joker has killed people with knives, but like
No, never.
In the Nolan movies in particular, he likes to use knives because he likes to savor the intimate moments, which is so fucked, but also why that movie's great. But also probably like took some inspiration from this, I would imagine, of being
Maybe,
like,
yeah.
oh no, that's horrific, killing people with knives. Yeah, we're gonna make Joker do that.
Well, also, you know what's funny? The whole him using knives thing. I was watching this film with Caroline, and she was like...
How did she like it, by the way?
Oh, you know, she loved it. I also watched it with my friend Goggin. He loved it. You can't dislike it.
Yeah, it's great.
But
yeah.
Caroline had seen it before, but like as a child. Anywho,
Okay.
but during some of the knife scenes, she turns to me and is like, "Have you ever seen Zorro?" And I was like, "No, but I will have to soon."
Soon, in like a month, you guys are gonna have to. Because it's my next selection.
So
There's a lot of
I thought that was
Zorro in
funny.
this too.
Yeah.
Clearly.
A lot. Like even I get like you were talking about like the anarchy symbol, like obviously because it's a V, but like.
But
just,
when
like,
he
putting a
does it in the
symbol
sign
into,
at the
like, Puss in
beginning,
Boots.
come on.
Yeah, when he does
It's
it in
like
the
carving
sign,
the
that was-
tree.
Yeah, that was very Zorro / Puss in Boots.
Absolutely.
This is the
Slash
two
Puss in
characters.
Boots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. All right.
Anything else?
Anything else to say?
If
Do we
you don't have anything
miscellaneous?
else to say right now, I do have the speech.
I
at the
also have
beginning
fun
of the movie.
facts.
I wrote a speech. Okay,
Okay, what do we
Carol.
want to do
wrote a
first? That?
speech.
Fun facts.
I think the speech would be a good way to end.
Yeah. Let's end
Okay,
with the speech.
yeah,
That'll be
yeah.
the last thing.
So remember the domino
So
scene?
go for it.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, I remember the domino scene.
How many dominoes do you think were used?
1,000 dominoes.
Really? I'm gonna say like 50,000.
Okay. You were both off in very different sides of the spectrum. It was 22,000.
Oh, okay. we split the difference.
Yeah.
It was right in the middle.
Just
Okay.
like Evie and V.
Just like Evie and V,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. And it took 200 hours and 4 pro domino people to set it up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That scene was a little much, I'll be honest.
Like,
I mean, I
stylistically
loved it,
gorgeous.
But in the montage, it was great.
But,
yes, stylistically gorgeous.
Like,
V
if they
taking
were
the time
looking
do that.
to cut it, like, if they needed to make a certain time, that easily could have.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I do love how it ends with, like, the one domino that doesn't fall because it's caught in the middle, and then
Yeah.
immediately cuts to the detective who's making his decision.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a nice little piece of editing there.
Although, but then they also had the domino in the train when they were sending it to Parliament. So,
Yeah.
you know, I get that for a little
It
bit
all
of an
ties
emotional
together.
arc. Yeah.
Like a movie.
Like a movie.
Like how a movie should, yeah.
It's so
Remember
nice when we
scenes?
watch movies that movie correctly.
I can't tell you how much I relate to that. Yeah, it is so nice. Yeah.
This movie's very reminiscent of a movie, how a movie should.
Yeah. Remember when people made movies that functioned as movies? This is one of them.
Oh boy. Did you know that there was a different V for a while cast? And they filmed
no.
with that other person for 4 weeks? His name was James Purefoy. I've never heard of him before, and I didn't even look up a picture. But they filmed with him for 4 weeks, and so even in some scenes that made it to the final edit, it is James Purefoy acting, but because it's a mask, it doesn't matter. And Hugo Weaving just went back and dubbed over it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I actually, before you move on to the next one, I actually thought for a while, I was like, how much of this was just a stunt double
Yeah.
and they just VO'd
Right?
his
I thought
voice?
that too.
I
'Cause
mean,
they
all the
could have.
fighting, obviously.
Yeah,
Well, obviously it's the
definitely.
fighting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, also,
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
you know how at the end, obviously, all the citizens come to Parliament and whatnot? They had to film between midnight and 4:30 a.m., but even so, they could only stop traffic for 4 minutes at a time. So I just don't know how logistically they got it done. That just doesn't make sense to me. All of those people, the extras on the streets, only 4 minutes? I don't know. That just blew my mind.
That seems like a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Too bad it wasn't 5 minutes.
Oh my god, if only.
And this is the most random fact, and I don't know if this was on purpose, but apparently in all of Adam Sutler's scenes, he only blinks once. I don't know what the relevance of that would be. I don't know if it was a coincidence and this actor just rarely needed to blink, but that was on IMDb.
Who was that?
I don't know. The Chancellor?
Is he the detective? Oh, the Chancellor.
Because his name was Sutler, right? Because it sounds like Hitler.
No, I thought that was John Hurt.
No, that's a
oh.
character name, I think.
Oh, I thought,
I
okay.
think.
Yeah.
Maybe then, yeah, that might have been him.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know if
I
that was
just know him as the
intentional or not.
Chancellor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
As all the
his name was
citizens would.
Sutler because
As all the good
IMDb
citizens.
also told me that they changed the name from the book slightly to
They
make
did.
it sound more like Hitler. Because
Yeah.
God forbid.
What was in the
Also,
book?
I can't remember. I just remember I saw that fact too that they changed it.
yeah. And Stephen Fry, this is also a really random one. I love IMDb fun facts. They're so unhinged. He's allergic to champagne, so much so that he was once hospitalized for being in a room that had champagne. I didn't know you could be allergic to champagne,
fuck?
one, and I
Yeah.
didn't know you could be that allergic to champagne.
The airborne chemicals.
Bubbles?
That is
Yeah, I don't
weird.
know. Also, Bryce Dallas Howard, Scarlett Johansson, and Keira Knightley auditioned for the role of Evie, obviously, with no success. And then I think my last two have to do with Guy Fawkes Day, because obviously that remember the 5th of November, classic.
Oh, yeah.
The reason we are doing this today, surprise, surprise, in case that wasn't obvious.
No coincidence.
No coincidence. Yeah.
So they obviously, not obviously, but smartly wanted to release this film on November 5th, but due to production delays, it wasn't released until the St. Patrick's Day weekend, so that's a pretty significant delay. But this
Wow,
one
yeah, okay.
kind of frustrates me because that was beyond their control, but this one is about the graphic novel. Apparently the grand finale where they blow up a building, it wasn't like Big Ben and the government in the novel, it was some street where money
I don't
things
remember.
happen.
It was something else, yeah.
Downing Street, I don't know.
I think it was Downing Street,
Anywho, so that grand finale with blowing everything up happened on November 10th. How does that make any sense? He wrote that in the
5
novel.
days after the 5th.
I guess,
Yeah,
but
I know,
why
it's
not
fine.
on the 5th?
I don't know.
I don't remember. It's been like 10 years now. So I do not remember
that just
exactly,
frustrated
but
me
it's been
reading
5
it
times
because
2
I was
years.
like, you wrote this. You could have made it anything.
I
is
wonder if it was
ridiculous.
like...
Instead of like a year later, maybe it was November 5th is when he broadcasted. November 10th is when he tried to blow it up in the same
Well,
year.
It was a year and
'Cause
5 days.
Yeah, because I think it's still all the same time passed, but I don't
okay.
remember. And maybe there was something like, maybe on the 5th, like, something thematically relevant happened. Maybe that's when, like, V died, but then, like, Evie, like, fulfills the plan on the 10th. I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't
know.
remember the
Anyway,
full
it just
details,
frustrated me. But that's it for
Well,
my
Alan
fun
Moore.
facts.
I just want to touch on the fact, I really like a lot of the visual parallels that they do. For example, like with Evie's parents being taken away, and then when Stephen Fry's character is taken away, it's like a shot for shot. Like,
Ouch, yeah.
Visual parallel.
That hurt.
But that works so well for, like, again, it's obviously hyper stylized, but like good for the theming of like her making those connections to be able to then like join the cause, which is really, really great. Yeah, and just as I already kind of said, but the dialogue in this movie just unreal. Shout out to the Wachowskis, and everyone delivers it really well, and it all comes together in a really great way. And also, Dan, the cliche of like sociopaths loving classical music,
Yeah.
kind of twisted on its head in this one in a fun way, which I enjoy.
Yeah, and then there's later in the movie, there's like he's listening to non-classical music. I was like,
Yes.
that's new.
Interesting, definitely interesting. Oh, and I also love a good, like, the character in the movie is like obsessed with a movie that like in some way is relevant to them, which obviously this with the Count of Monte Cristo, which is why he's all about like swordplay and stuff like that, but also like thematically relevant, and that was a nice touch.
Yeah, what was the line that they showed from that movie? Like, he's like, it wasn't my sword that disarmed you, it was like your own wrongdoing or something.
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was cool. And then, I mean, look, just the Batman similarities. How can we overlook them? I mean, we've already talked about some, but even just like this movie ending with a train, Batman Begins ending with a train, like,
True.
like that is a similarity.
That's
But then
pretty broad.
even, I mean, literally both movies end with a person's plan to send a train somewhere to blow something up. That is the climax of both movies.
But I feel like that happens a lot.
No.
Does it?
Name
Yeah.
one other movie where that happens, where someone puts something on a train and sends it somewhere to blow up.
Is Bullet Train? Does that happen? I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen
I
Bullet
don't
Train.
know.
There's like, what about Crash? Wasn't there something about a train?
Crash.
Crash?
No,
the
no
Oscar
trains.
Best Picture movie about
not
racism
that
or
one.
whatever?
Yeah, that wasn't about
Wasn't
an
there
actual,
one
like, crash.
with a train and people had to stop it? I don't know. I just feel like
Yeah,
I see
there
a
was
lot of
that-
train films.
the
I think
movie
Jake Gyllenhaal was in
Unstoppable
one.
with,
Okay, yeah.
Oh, that was Source Code.
Oh, I know.
That was
it's all
that
the
was a
same to
different
me.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of another like
I'm just-
directly.
Yeah, specifically like
If I had
the
a better
person-
memory, I would have lots of arguments.
No, like I agree. There's tons of like we're fighting on a train and we have to stop a train. Like that happens a lot. But specifically, like my plot is to send the train to a location to blow up
For
like,
an act of terrorism.
as an act of terrorism to like unite the city. Like literally, both movies have that. But then even like there's a character in the same Gordon who ends up being an ally. Batman. All right. That's
And and one more thing about Gordon, the detective is obviously a parallel for Jim Gordon.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was all I was thinking about with him.
definitely 100%.
Okay, time for the speech.
Time for the
Yes,
speech.
please. I'm also really glad that you were the one who pulled it up and was ready to read it because you have such a great reading voice. Go for it, Dan.
Thanks. All right, here we go. Voila! In view, humble vaudevillian veteran, cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate. This visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi now vacant, vanished. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified, and has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin, vanguarding vice and vouchsafing the violently vicious and voracious violation of volition. The only verdict is vengeance, a vendetta, held as a votive not in vain, for the value and veracity of such shall one day vindicate the vigilant and the virtuous. And
I tried to count
particularly
along.
think,
there were way too many.
Too many.
yeah,
Too many
I
too
particularly
quickly.
think that last bit where he starts by saying like the only verdict is vengeance. That whole part is like where I really was like, wow, that's a great.
It pulls it together. It definitely.
It's very impressive.
Because
I was of the same place. I was like, it's a little cheesy that he keeps doing this.
Yeah.
Very like
the first bit is very comedic,
but
But then that last bit, he gets more serious, even with the music cue. I noticed, and it's like this is what you really need to listen to.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I mean, it does. I guess like even going back to the idea of like Count of Monte Cristo, like. He would be, I guess, like theatrical. You know, he's all about the theatricality.
He wears a mask.
He wears a mask, so like, yeah, you know, he memorized his speech.
It fits, yeah.
It fits. I guess it does fit. And Hugo Weaving delivers it so well.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, it's fine.
Yep.
Well, we did it.
Did we do it? Live episode?
We did it.
Yeah. Just kind of live episode in the can.
If you're listening to this on the day of release, this was recorded not too long ago.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not,
today.
It was recorded a while ago.
It was recorded exactly as many days ago as November 5th, 2022.
Yep.
From you.
All right. Do we know what's next?
Maybe the...
Either Jordan Peele or Selection Series. Depends on...
It depends on when we are able to record, or the video.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, we can talk about this off recording then.
Yeah.
Because that'll decide when I need to have that ready by.
Okay, sounds good.
We can cut that out if you want.
Nah,
or we can
this is
leave
all
it in.
staying.
No, unedited.
It's all staying in.
Unedited. No edits.
But we're trimming the ends off. They're not going to hear the sync clap.
No, I won't. I will after from your. Yeah, I'll put the intro and then I'll put your thing. But this is all staying in. And
okay.
I'm
you
going
don't
to
have to put an outro.
after all this.
Yeah.
No, I'll put the outro after all this.
Okay. Well,
all right.
We did it.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
Stay beautiful. Sorry.
Remember the 5th of November.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
That doesn't make any sense.
Thanks again for listening to the Feature Length Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you like this video, give us a rating and review. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes of the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we post a new video, or follow the podcast on Spotify. If you want to connect with us directly, you can follow us on Instagram at Feature Length Podcast, or even send us an email at featurelengthpodcast@gmail.com. Catch you on the flip side.